everybody. Uh, Hopefully, everybody is awake after 90 minutes of GPC before this. I appreciate everybody coming in this morning. And what we are doing today on this panel is just try to do a kind of quick rollout of what PEO training is. I think there is a lot of discussion about it. I think many of you probably saw some of the teammates on the floor. We definitely have talked about it in other panels. But we wanted it to, specifically this year, I made the point of bringing the full team here to give you a little bit of perspective of what PEO training is, where we are going, and give you a little bit of insight on each one of the divisions and what they're going after. And kind of get that conversation going as a newly created directorate under the Air Force Life Cycle Management Center. So for those of you that I have not met, my name is Carlos Quiñones. I am the acting PEO for training. It's a newly created directorate under Air Force Life Cycle Management Center. And the purpose of the PEO is to have a focused enterprise look into the training community, training enterprise. A little bit of background, just because I think for those of you who are not tracking how we got here and all the things about GPC or global power competition, and we did a little bit of that on the previous panel. But if we can bring the slides up, I don't know if I can see them, but So the reason we got here is by now, most of you have heard on the reorganization, the Secretary Kendall and Chief Alvin are pushing forward with regards to the Air Force. And the Air Force is going to this re-optimization to be able to compete on this great power competition. And really what is driving that change is the fact that the strategic environment has changed significantly. The old construct in which we were operating for many years, the Air Force was in the Middle East, working on a different set of challenges, a specific kind of land war supporting with complete air superiority is what the Air Force has been doing for a very long time, as we prosecuted war and terror and things beyond that, Afghanistan and others. But the environment is changing. Obviously, the national security strategy speaks to that, and it speaks to near-peer environment. Obviously, the case of China is one of the examples, but not the only example of why the Air Force needs to realign. We are going through these significant changes, which I will kind of mention really quickly. But at the end of this exercise is bringing Air Force readiness to the forefront. Our operators need to be ready, and in order for them to be able to do that mission, they require to have the systems that will allow them to get their job done. They also need the training that required for them to execute. And you probably have heard senior leadership on the Air Force talk about training as an asymmetric advantage, and that's something that we need to maintain. And because of that, one of the main changes that came out of the relook and the optimization for great power competition was a realignment of the portfolios within Lifecycle Management Center, and particularly with the creation of what now is going to be the Air Dominance Center. And within that, there was the Agile Combat Support PEO. They did a multitude of things from support type activities, PNT and simulators. And then there was the Mobility and Training PEO, which had all the aircraft on the training side. So they took those two and combined it into what now we call PEO training. Well, why that matters? Well, because it has been decades where we've been operating to the construct that it's been kind of platform specific. So we've been creating systems in order to train and equip our warfighters and our users based on the specific need of that functional area, either fighters, bombers, whatever the case may be, and it's been focused on that. Now, for in some cases it worked very well, but in other cases there is challenges, and more important, there has never been an enterprise look at it. So we have not making enterprise decisions with training at the forefront. It's been at a little bit or more at a later stage, and in some cases ad hoc, and we wanted to move away from that. So the challenge that we have today is to now bring this new organization into play to support all functional areas, but more important, to provide the Air Force that training. And I know we keep saying this enterprise look, little buzzword here, but it really speaks to coming with solutions. They are not just aligned to that one functional area, but it can be utilized across multiple functional areas, which allow us ability to change faster. We can be innovative, but also we can extend how we use our dollars and be able to maximize the dollars allocated for modernization and for training specific. But before I go forward, I also want to point out that there's a key piece happening within GPC that is in hand with PEO training. As you, I'm hoping you're already tracking also, is that the AATC, our training command, is now being, is changing and being elevated into the Airman Development Center. And that change and the responsibilities and authorities that come with it are key in actually to how we move forward. Because as that center comes online with the full responsibilities of training beyond just what we do today, both on the early stages of pilot production, airmanship and others, training, maintenance and that, but there's also some of the operational look that in some cases was done by some of the other MAJCOMs that all being integrated within that new center. PEO training is the acquisition arm to that activity. So now we have a focused approach, and we also actually have a customer that is expecting for us to deliver on those capabilities and bring these new solutions and innovation to their system. So I think we are at a stage on our acquisition timelines, and with regards to GPC, that is reason to be excited about it. We have a great set of opportunities, support from senior leadership in order to go make this happen and be able to really reshape how training is performed, how it's being acquired, and how we actually ensure that our men and women are getting what they need to execute their mission. So I think that's kind of the basics of that, and I would like to encourage the team to think about those as you get your questions and see what areas, because we've been thinking about this for a while. Doesn't mean we have all the answers. There's still plenty of work to be done, and we can use the feedback from both the government and industry on how we move forward with regards to this new enterprise. I kind of already talked about the current environment, so we'll go to the next one here. So with regards to the GPC, we kind of already touched on that. It kind of speaks to all the different threats that we are concerned about. And you see that set of changes that the reoptimizing for great power competition brings, developed the people, which is with regards to how we do airman development command, and then you see Project Power, talk about readiness, and then at the bottom there, right, you see the develop of integrated capabilities. So of course, as a material solution provider, it's our job to really, that's not where we live, that's what our job is, to be able to bring those integrated solutions. And another buzzword, we all talk about integrated solution. What does that mean? Well, instead of going to the construct where Colonel Ryan and Colonel Ferrari have been operating for a long time, where we have a simulator that supports the one platform, and that is all that they can do, We have system or training networks. They are limited to how they can play across multiple functional areas. Now it's our job to bring simulators that can be utilized across, for example, about networks that can integrate and bring some of these other systems so we can actually give a full picture and a more comprehensive training environment for our teammates. So PEO training is the combination of all these systems that we talked about. That we're going specific of that. You see everything from early airmanship and the things we do at the academy. We do with pilot generation all the way to mission rehearsal and delivery of or getting our user ready to go. You see networks, our trainers, and all the steps in between needed in order to actually provide that specific unique warfighter solution, meaning that human system ready to go and perform their work. And I think the way we really talk about this, we talk about it in two stages. We talked about it from what we call PEO Training 1.0, which was the basic reorganization. And then we talked about what we call PEO Training 2.0, which is what we're going into the future as we move forward. Just want to kind of share with you as we have a brand new patch we are very proud of, but also how we are being working into defining what the mission set for us is. And we are here to develop, deliver, and sustain warfighter winning capabilities to enable winning air power. And by the way, I mean, the key on that is integrated training. That is the key on this. There's other PEOs that are developing, delivering, sustaining whatever functional area are. This specific is about training, which for the first time in the Air Force, there is a PEO responsible for that area. We want to be the trusted provider for adaptive and innovative training, which means is we are not in the business of doing more of the same. We need to find ways in how we actually get our teammates to actually get the information they need it when they need it, and be able to utilize it in a fast mode. So the days of delivering a PowerPoint or a bunch of instruct on time in a classroom to be able to train our teams are gone. And we need to be able to find the tools that we can enable better ways to learn and train for our forces. And of course, we believe that as a provider of material solutions, we are helping and establish air superiority in the future. So that's why air dominance begins here. And that's how we're going forward in the mentality that I want our team to have. This is a kind of quick pictorial of what PEO training, I already kind of mentioned some of these, but you can see we have the All Simulators division, or many of you are familiar with. That division is stay within us, but one big change that happened in there was we actually divided the Simulators division into two now. Now there is the Advanced Training Division, which Colonel Ryan is leading, and he will talk to us about it in a little bit more. And then you also have the traditional SIMS work that Colonel Ferrani is leading today, and he will give us more information on that. Why we did that is it was kind of two reasons. Number one, there is, as part of GPC, we also inherit a lot of the ranges, support equipment, and for emitters and other areas. And we needed to have a home for that activity. And as we went across the portfolio and identified how best to do that, we realized that there was a kind of more enterprise look to the training piece, and more activities that support across functional, across different activities, things like the Joint Simulation Environment, the SCARS program, all the range activities, all more like the enterprise look. So we put all those together under Colonel Ryan to kind of put that forward. And then we have actually the specific simulators for all the different platforms and our FMS partners activities, which now Colonel Ferrani is actually leading on that. And I think this it's a good split of the workload, and also allow us to concentrate on some specific activities that right now that before it was getting kind of to be a lot. Another big change from the old ACS days to PEO training is the fact that now we actually have the aircraft side of the house for training. So with this movement, now the T7 program, which is our replacement for the T38, comes to PEO training. And we are fully engaged on getting that premier trainer ready to deliver to our ATC partners for them to support pilot generation. But also we have to, in the meantime, we have to maintain all the tools and aircraft that we're using today, T-38, T-6, T-1, and gliders and many others. So our legacy, the legacy aircraft division on the training side also comes to us. And then together now we have the full spectrum end-to-end on how you do pilot generation. You actually do aircrew training in one place. Now, I know there's a lot of discussion about that specific pilot generation, aircrew training. That is not all that we are responsible for. Obviously, maintenance training and multiple other areas are critical to our work. So those activities are things that we're looking to fully cover within our what we call PEO Training 2.0 and our final portfolio recommendation. I already mentioned the work that came from the Ranger side under Colonel Ryan, and then there was some extended reality work that the RSO, the Rapid Sustainment Office was working on that also came to PEO training because mostly was supporting training activities. So I'm going to pass it down to our team here to kind of give you a quick overview of what each one of the division is doing today and how we are set up to provide the initial support. I will start with our T7 team.
Yeah, hey, I'm Josh Looper. I'm the chief ground-based portion of our, chief engineer for the ground-based portion of our training system. Unfortunately, Colonel Valesky could not be here, so I'm stepping in to brief for him. As Colonel Quinones stated, we are replacing and expanding upon the training capability provided by the T-38 to deliver advanced pilot training capability and develop premier bomber and fighter bomber pilots in conjunction with undergraduate pilot training for AETC. We're currently a single contract for the aircraft and GBTS with Boeing. We're delivering 351 aircraft and 46 simulators by 2035. And we're also running a separate source selection through TSA-4 for the MTS, and that's currently in work. From a portfolio perspective, from a schedule perspective, the program is currently in the later stages of EMD, and we're dap smack in the middle of flight tests focused on ramping up into production in the next couple of years. Additionally, we're making significant efforts to deliver the training devices to Randolph as soon as possible so that we can provide training ahead of aircraft delivery to support the training of AETC's initial cadre. From a simulator portfolio perspective, we manage the acquisition of a full suite of aircrew training devices supporting the T-7A aircraft, including 46 ATDs, over 15 ground training devices, interactive multimedia instruction, and the full gambit of supporting curriculum materials. T-7A program also provides a embedded training, live virtual constructive training capability that supports the aircraft and ground-based flight simulators with virtual and constructed targets, constructive simulation of systems, weapons, and threats, allowing student pilots to build cockpit and crew resource management proficiency in simple and complex simulated air combat environments and mission scenarios. From a digital engineering perspective, I know across the whole program, we are implementing a process to leverage SysML for the training curriculum development and long-term training task management. These efforts will streamline the management of the technical baseline by the program office and give us insight into the streamlined, data-driven TSRAs in addition to bidirectional traceability between training tasks, system requirements, system design elements, and our acceptance test procedures. So that's all I've got for the T7 today. Passing it on to Abby here.
Hi, my name is Abigail, and I go by Abby Pogrzelski. I am the Senior Material Leader for the Legacy Training Aircraft Division. I lead a team of 300 acquisition professionals to sustain and modernize the training aircraft that are utilized for the pilot production and flying training systems for the Air Force and for the Navy and our foreign partners around the world. We support approximately 42 countries around the world with their training programs for pilot training. My portfolio consists of the T6. The T6 is the primary trainer for pilots for both the Air Force and the Navy. The T-38, which is our advanced trainer for the bombers, for the bomber pilots for the Air Force, and then the fighter pilot community, we support both NATO pilots as well as Air Force pilots. We have the T-1 aircraft in my portfolio, and that's our advanced trainer for our mobility aircraft and mobility pilots. Then we have the Academy fleet that was mentioned. So we support introduction to fundamentals of flying and airmanship at the very beginning. So when we capture students at either the Air Force Academy or in colleges and ROTC programs, we bring them in and we start introducing them to flying. And we start piquing their interest from the very beginning. And so that's within my portfolio, as well as an E9. So E9 is a small fleet of 2 aircraft down in Florida, and we support the Eglin test range over the Gulf of Mexico with sea surveillance and telemetry gathering over the Gulf, and that supports the test range for live fire, both testing as well as training for our fighter pilot community. That's the only opportunity they have to do that live fire training, and so we support that mission. In addition to that, we support over 42 countries in foreign military sales. Within that program, I have T6, so we still have an active production line out in Wichita at Textron Aviation Defense, and so we are supporting countries with new production aircraft as well as sustainment. In addition to that, within my portfolio, we maintain cradle to grave for our foreign partners, and so all of the aircraft that are no longer in the active Air Force inventory, we still manage within my program. So aircraft like F4 and F5, we have partners around the world that are flying those today, and so we manage those within my office. So in addition to that, my primary stakeholders are Air Education Training Command for the Air Force and the Naval Aviation Training Command for the Navy. We do support 4 different MAJCOMs for the Air Force, NASA, Department of State, as well as all the other countries. My platforms are a mix of organically sustained and contract logistic managed sustained aircraft, and we have approximately 50 programs right now spread amongst all of those platforms. Some of my programs, for example, are an avionics modernization where we're modernizing the T6 suite right now of avionics due to obsolescence. We do things like we have really old parts that we've got to redesign. So in T-38, very old aircraft, we're replacing it with the T-7. We're currently doing a lot of projects to address those and redesign some of our components. All the way to supply chain. So a lot of my programs are CLS, and so we're doing a lot of supply chain management contracts, services contracts for those different CLS efforts. Now, while I manage the aircraft, I partner with my sister organization over here, WNS Simulators, for all the simulators. So all the simulators are managed in his office, and I have the aircraft themselves. Now, my aircraft were all designed prior to the digital transformation for the Air Force and the DoD. And so while we have a lot more digital efforts that are going on for legacy platforms, we're leveraging the digital tools where we can and where it makes sense with the biggest return on investment. And I know that was talked about in the last session just a little bit. And so that's applicable to all of my programs. So using things like Cameo and Launchpad and trying to create digital government reference architectures where it makes sense on programs. So we may not be able to do the entire platform, but we'll do it for specific programs and then use those as building blocks as we do future iterations and future programs, as well as leveraging all the digital tools that we can for business processes. We're trying to transform all of our business processes from manual to very data-driven and very digital. So with that, thank you very much. I'm going to pass it on to Colonel Matt Ryan over here for the next briefing.
Thanks, Abby. So Matt Ryan, go by T2. I'm the Advanced Training Capabilities Division Chief. So let's step back again, hit the why. Colonel Quinones opened with the reason that this directorate was stood up was because there's a strategic advantage that the Air Force has enjoyed for decades with regard to our readiness and our level of capability that not just our widgets have, but that our operators bring to that, right? So if you look at that, really my team's niche area in that is to focus on the advanced end of that training and that high-end fight piece, right? So what we want to be able to do is we want our operators effectively to go to the scrimmage field and get bloodied a little bit, right? In some cases, we want them to get trounced so that they learn those hard lessons so that when they hit the arena of conflict, they win and they come home safe, right? So that's the reason we exist as a division, is to bring those advanced training capabilities to bear. Probably don't get style points for originality on the name, Advanced Training Capabilities. When we say that, we're not talking necessarily advanced in the sense of latest, greatest tech on the planet. In some cases, we're going after that. But really what I would say we're focused on is the advanced spectrum of training, the advanced portion of that, right? So you start out when you bring, Lieutenant Snuffy in, as Abby was talking about, right? And you're trying to teach them how to make trees get bigger and smaller without killing themselves. We don't really do anything on that end of the spectrum, right? We're over on the far right end of the scale where you're turning them into steely-eyed killers, frankly, right? To go down range and deliver mission effects. So that's kind of our niche in life with regard to our mission set. And I would say one of the exciting things about this is, in my estimation, this is the most logical grouping of programs and capability development that the Air Force has ever put together with regard to training, not only across the directorate, but in particular, if you look at what's in my portfolio, specifically if you look at LVC, in the past, the Air Force has scattered those capabilities all over the place amongst different, not only directorates, but divisions. We now all have those under one roof to where we can manage those with an enterprise view and really work with our lead MAGCOM, ACC, on how to bring those capabilities to bear so that we do have the best operators in the world. So quickly to summarize a little bit of what's on the board there with regard to what's in the portfolio, we've got a spectrum of widgets all the way from what I would call legacy fielded devices that have been out on the live ranges for quite some time. And then we've got things that are squarely in the modernization path where we're trying to bring new capabilities to the field and replace or tech refresh some of those things that have been around for a while. In particular on the live ranges, we've got programs that are targeting that. And then we've got things that are far more evolutionary in nature and really are changing in partnership with our MAF, CAF, and SOF forces, the way we provide capabilities for them to train. And in partnership with, I know some of you are here from other PEOs, other directorates, and in partnership with your teams as well. So we've got those devices that span that entire spectrum. You can see we work with pretty much every MAGCOM in the Air Force. We also have joint and coalition partners that we work with, so a huge base of partnerships that we maintain, and a worldwide presence, right? We've got a lot of CONUS ranges, a lot of OCONUS presence that we provide, in particular supporting EUCOM, PACOM, and our partners in those regions as well. So specifically, some of the programs that are in my portfolio, we've got legacy range emitters. So if you go hit the ranges, both backyard ranges and our big ranges, you're going to find our emitters out there. We've got modernization programs with ARTS V3 is the newest one, so advanced range threats, bringing that on board now, and the team just really got underway with that here very recently. So that'll be a program that we look forward to fielding, again, to support that high-end fight and to be able to bring the realism to those ranges that right now there are a lot of threats we can't replicate. ARTS is getting after that. We also have live mission operations, so again, another tie to live fly, but that's a capability specifically that I think is going to be a linchpin in that LVC, that live virtual constructive, and bringing that together for the Air Force and in partnership with the Navy, right? Frankly, the Navy's made a lot more headway on LVC than what the Air Force has at this point, but LMOC is going to be that pathway to really get after that for the Air Force, I think. We also have P5, P6 pods in our portfolio, so again, live fly support there. And then as you move from that, I said we've got everything under one roof. If you go look on the virtual side, we've got our distributed mission operations capabilities, supporting all the different MAGCOMs. So we've got that in our portfolio. And then we've got SCARS, Simulators Common Architecture and Requirements and Standards. So that's kind of a foundational underlying program that gets after a lot of the things that, in particular, Rod was talking about if you're in the last session, of getting after reference architectures or getting after reference enabling standards so that we can have a data fabric that supports simulation and training, and so that we can have a way of standardizing some of the hardware stacks that we're bringing to simulation and training to get to a more affordable state, to break vendor lock, and in many cases to try to get to one set of authoritative data. One of the huge problems we've had in a training community for decades is we've had no fault of industry, but we've asked you to basically build the same thing but in your own unique way dozens of times, right? That is not a good use of our very limited resources. So as the Air Force gets more resource constrained, we've got to find ways to build it once, have one authoritative data set, share that out, and let industry focus on other niche areas that they can bring to the fight. So that's a big thing that we'll be focusing on with SCARS. And then probably the biggest program and the one that maybe has the most buzz is Joint Simulation Environment. That is all about the high-end fight. That is doing things that we've never been able to do before, either because of security concerns or because our ranges just aren't big enough, or it's just not safe to go and demonstrate some of the things that we need to demonstrate together, right? So we'll be able to span that entire spectrum of training, and we're really working with our lead MAGCOM, ACC, but other partners as well, on how does this new world fit together with something like JSC. You're never going to take away the need to do live fly, but the MAGCOMs really are looking and stepping back at what is the right proportion of live fly versus simulation, right? There's still going to be a need to go out and sweat at night in the weather trying to hit the tanker and do those hard things and develop that muscle memory. But there are other parts that you just can't exercise in live fly, and that's what JSC is all about. So with that, I'll hand it off to Colonel Faronic to talk sims.
Thanks, T2. You left me 56 minutes, so maybe we can get through this portfolio. All right, so Nick Faronic took over the job from Colonel Ryan on the legacy side of the simulators, the division that I guess we kind of went back to the future, right? This division was just maintaining, delivering, modernizing simulators for the unique weapon systems. And then we slowly added things like SCARS and JSC, and now we're going back to that sort of, that original mold, if you will. I also noticed you saved the best for last, certainly not me. I'm humbled to be sitting up here with this esteemed group of leaders, but best, and I mean biggest. We have the largest active year budget, the most platforms, supporting the most users, right? It is a vast portfolio, and I truly mean the best professionals in the acquisition workforce doing that job. They've got a huge task, and they do it with grace, effectiveness, efficiency, and it's really humbling, honestly, to watch how they work. I would say I think we have sort of 5 guiding priorities to do the things, you see up here. The first one is my number one priority is to keep the lights on, right? To ensure the availability of concurrent, I'll put that in air quotes because we do our best, concurrent, high fidelity, and connected training devices. Along the lines of connected, I have to also ensure, especially over the last few years, the cybersecurity and resiliency of these systems so we can connect into things like distributed mission operations. So that takes up about 99% of the budget and 99% of our daily life. But then another guiding priority, and something Colonel Q has talked about several times and fits in line with what T2 was talking about, is we also have to go after that next thing, right? That adaptive, innovative solution, an open architecture, a single reconfigurable device that is much cheaper to field, much cheaper to maintain, that can take a host of virtualized OFPs, and I can take a sled from a F-15 and have an F-15 driver at one point, and then take that sled out, plug in the new OFP, and I can put an F-16 driver, a B-1 driver in there to train. And I think that is sort of the vision that we have, but with 1% of the funding I have left to go do it, it's certainly a challenge. And so I know I've talked to a lot of the industry partners this week about how do we get after that together, right? How do we go into the MAGCOM offices as a team and say, hey, look, I know you love this Level D high fidelity simulator and you grew up on this, but consider how efficient it would be to take a part task trainer and do 80% of your curriculum for about 10% of your budget, right? And that's kind of the vision that I have in my head. Along those lines, and you see up on the slide, we support a vast array of international partners, and it was great to meet a few of you this week. We're trying to strengthen those partnerships and those alliances by delivering capability, training system capability at the speed of relevance. And a lot of times we say relevance and we think, oh, we mean taking the latest and greatest technologies. And yes, that we certainly need to do that. But another example of relevance is delivering it when you're ready to receive it. One of my biggest challenges in our FMS portfolio today is we delivered a system to our partner and it's been in mothballs in a storage closet for about 3 years. And when it was time to roll that out, guess what? It isn't ready to just flip the switch and turn on. So now we're fighting that battle to get it current, to get it up and running. We're having to cannibalize from different systems to do that. And so speed of relevance really to me is when you're ready to take it, right? When you're ready to jump in the sim. And then finally, I mentioned very humbled to work with such a great group of professionals, but one of our guiding efforts, because I have such a big portfolio of, I'll say, smaller programs and lots of different programs to manage and contracts to manage, I'm a training ground, and no pun intended there, I'm a training ground for a lot of our acquisition professionals in LCMC. And so continuing to develop that workforce, to get the most that we can out of them, to continue to develop, deliver, modernize, sustain these systems effectively and efficiently is certainly a guiding priority. I listed 5, and I put the personnel last, and that doesn't sit lightly with me. It's certainly not a 5th priority, right? It's up there 1A, 1B. But that is a challenge for us, and I've talked to several of you industry partners this week about courseware that's out there to help them, I'll say, level the ramp to be a simulator expert, and then allow me and my team to make you an acquisition expert. And so we've worked with several companies, several industry partners, and capitalizing on some of those courses that you offer. So thank you for that. So with that, I think I'm passing it back to Colonel Q.
Hey, thanks, Dave. So before we go into some of the questions and more discussion, I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about, okay, so what's next? So we've talked to you about how we got here. We talked about the rationale, why this needed to happen. We kind of gave you an insight of what the leadership and the Air Force is asking us to do. And then you have that kind of understanding of what each one of these organizations now brings under this umbrella for the enterprise or the training side. But this is obviously, there's a lot more to do with regards to what this portfolio needs to be. And this is the part where we are in the middle of what we are calling a training 2.0, which is beyond the realignment of the current program, is where the portfolio needs to go. What areas we need to be working on and what we need to be taking on as an acquisition organization in order to really meet the demands of our users and stakeholders. So we are actually working through several initiatives right now. The first one is we conducted what we call a training summit. And that training summit brought all the matchcoms into one room and multiple half organizations, A3T, we have all the A3s and A5 from all the matchcoms. We have the A4s, and we spent about 2 days kind of going through the gaps from the system and capability level to understand, number one, what things are missing and why is that, and if there is a reason or a need for the acquisition support into those specific areas. And it was a very interesting discussion when you start talking about things like, for example, we talked about aircraft, we didn't talk about helicopters here at all. Is that an area where we need to be looking and bringing that as enterprise look? We talked about throughout the last 2 days, as I walk around, I think almost every single vendor here has some kind of extended reality, virtual reality solution for training and for the service. But there's no one look on how to go acquire that and actually manage that as an enterprise look for maintenance, for aircraft, for aircrew training, for medical training, and all the other needs associated with the training enterprise. There was significant needs with regards to basic training and the systems that they utilize in order to go through that initial training where we take one of our young civilians coming in and try to make that into an airman. What do we need to bring to bear with regards to that specific function? And if you go into all the functional sides, maintenance and all the other medical and all the other functions within the Air Force, they also have needs for training specific things that right now are not being covered by any acquisition organization. So that is the next step with regards to the construct that we need to solve. We recognize also that some of our sister services have been doing this for a while, and there is lessons learned to gain for what they've done for the organizations. I mean, the Army has had a PEO training for a while. So we actually started a RAND study that is now looking at how the other services and other agencies are going after training to look at what technology opportunities are out there, what gaps within the initial analysis that the portfolio did, in order for us to combine between internal inputs from our matchcoms, a outside look that we did with our RAND study, and then some other smaller studies that we're working on, is to bring that next set of recommendation back to a leadership to say, hey, sir, ma'am, this is what we think training needs to be going after, and as we go into that phase 2. And we kind of give you some of the examples here on our graphic, but I think is clear to, and what I want to convey to the team is, number one, we know that the current one is a great step forward, but is definitely some work to be done. And I think we are poised and ready to go do that work. We understand that there's some learning out there from industry, from other services, and within our own service, and actually within the department now with the Space Force, that we need to take into account as we make decisions on how best to leverage and build this portfolio. And finally, there's a recognition that this process should not stop. The fact that we just did this analysis 1 doesn't mean that we need to have a way to constantly reassess what is that we are supposed to provide. Are we providing those products on the timelines and within the cost and providing the performance needed? And that work and how we construct ourselves to be able to do better, be more adaptive, more creative, innovative, is something that we are taking very seriously. So as we get the opportunity to start a PEO from the ground up, we are not just doing business as usual. We're actually relooking at every single process, every single approach in order to see if there's a better way to go after these challenges. The other piece that I think is important that we talked about within this construct is that we also understand that there is a significant amount of ideas, innovation, technology, particularly on the industry side, they need a way or an entry into the service and the government side. Now, if you were here for the previous panel, obviously you heard about the ICO and the Integrated Capabilities Office, the Integrated Development Office, about the Integrated Capabilities Command, and all those efforts within the GPC is in order to help kind of prioritize and have a clear signal to industry. But we recognize that those are going to be, it's a big task, and it's not going to be all the way level to every single system, every single specific area. And then we within the PEO, in conjunction with the lab and other agencies, we're going to have to do some of that engagement pool of opportunities. So another area that we are establishing is we are building a tech director with an innovation cell at the training level that will allow us to look into all those opportunities and see what other activities and opportunities we can bring in. For example, 19th Air Force does a lot of experimentation for opportunities and activities that they work on a regular basis. So it's the idea that this innovation group will be able to interact with our 19th Air Force teammates and see which one of those we or they need help with, that we need to then take those from a experimentation level and scale it to be able to provide more enterprise look. So there is a acknowledgement that if we do not come up with a way in which industry can provide innovation and input into our processes, we are going to just be more of the same. And that's not what we're trying to do. So there is one more step that we are taking forward. We've been in place since October 1st, so it's not, so we are running fast. We're definitely running with scissors, I'll tell you that. But we are in the process of building all these things together in a very quick manner and see what works. And what works, we're going to keep. And what doesn't work, we're going to get rid of and going to continue to iterate until we get to the solution that we need. And that's how we move forward to what eventually I believe is going to be this more extended construct that goes beyond just pilot generation, aircrew training, and other areas. So as I kind of move to stage 2 of that, I think what I would like to do is, we have received some questions from already, and if you have any others, please send it our way, that I want to pass to the team, because I think this is a great opportunity. Some of these questions are how we are already showing the benefit of the realignment. And there's a couple examples that I have in mind, but I'm going to pass it to the team. So I'm going to start with from your perspective, how this realignment is really helping your portfolio and what benefits you see in real time with regards to the realignment and what is coming down the road as we kind of settle into this new construct. And I will start with T7.
I think from a T7 perspective, I think the integration with the SIMSPO has been extremely beneficial. I know we've been communicating about some of our challenges and pulling in some of the WNS folks to help us and to move forward according to what you just described as far as updating the requirements, reevaluating what we've got. You've been involved very heavily with some of of our current efforts. So yeah, I think it's been beneficial from that perspective.
I'll kind of jump this with Nick because the example that he's talking about is on their T7 program, we have the ground-based training system. It's a key element to how pilot production is envisioned to go into the future. And one of the main assumptions that were made for that program was that some of the work that currently is done on the aircraft is going to be moved to the actual simulator itself. It's not just currency and be able to give you some initial looks. It's a no kidding. We'll be able to certify some of that work at the in the simulator side. That way, it's cheaper. We can adjust faster and allow to be more flexibility on the curriculum. But as we go into some of the performance challenges that we have with regards to that system, we ask Nick and his team to bring some of that expertise and say, hey, how can we streamline this process and see if we can actually get a better product and get it faster to our users. So Nick, you can talk to us a little bit about the things the team is doing on that area.
Yeah, sure. I think T7 was the first example that popped into my head was, hey, T7 has a challenge. We have the expertise. Just bring them together. Now, could that have happened without PEO training? Absolutely. But I think it makes it a little more, a little simpler, a little more effective, a little more efficient. And honestly, they have come into some meetings we've had with other MAGCOMs about how we're trying to go solve problems so they can see the spectrum of options out there. And we're actively in development right now for some of those options, right? It might not be exactly what we did for T-38, for instance. It may not be exactly what we did for B-52, but I think taking lessons learned and best practices from all of those is going to allow us to come up with the, I'll say the optimal solution. Now, optimal is going to continue to iterate, I think, in this program, right? We want to get something out quickly that meets some percentage of the warfighter's need, but we need to continue, an agile development process to continue spinning out updates. I would also say, I think Colonel Ryan can probably talk to this a little bit better, but having sat in this seat with both SCARS and JSE under one single SML division, allowing us to break that out and allowing him to focus more on that future fight, right, that advanced fight, and let me worry about the day-to-day, keeping the lights on stuff, concurrency and high fidelity and connectivity and all the things I talked about earlier, definitely allows us to develop that platform, with a more pointed focus. Similarly with SCARS, he and I are tied at the hip, right? I mean, yes, SCARS is a program of record, a sustainment initiative. However, I'm not successful without him, and he's not successful without me. And so keeping that focus at an enterprise level under one PEO is I think, another good example of how this sort of fits together. So pass it back. I don't know if anybody else wants to
I'd
weigh in.
agree with you on that. I think in some cases there's new opportunities before us, and then in other cases it's just getting a better or renewed focus on things, right? So Nick picked up on one that was coming to mind for me, right? Being able to really focus on the high-end fight into the spectrum, and in particular, frankly, necking down some of the breadth of things that I was trying to keep track of, and being able to look more deeply at opportunities where SCARS can be applied and help. I think that's been a huge benefit of this reorganization. One of the big efforts that I've been discussing quite a lot with half A3 recently is, hey, what are we going to do with SCARS? What's the focus for this year? And then Lieutenant Colonel Delgadillo, who's my ML for SCARS, right? She's really been working with the team on, hey, what's the long-range roadmap look like there? And one of the things that we want to get after in the near term, budget permitting, but one of the things we want to get after near term, which ties in with JSC, but it also ties in with Nick's team, is getting after things like a common geospatial database, right? Having one set of multispectral data. Last time I checked, there's one Earth. Anybody find another one out there? Yeah, I didn't think so. But right, we've modeled that thing 6 ways from Sunday from 50 different companies and everybody's got their, secret sauce so that we can't share the data, or everybody's got their way of using it that's a little bit different. We've been doing that for decades. That does not make any sense at all, right? So what makes a heck of a lot more sense is have one database that's structured in a known, understood format that complies with standards that everybody can contribute to, so that it's just getting better and better and better, so that I can share that. One of my first targets is JSC, but other targets are Nick's portfolio. Other targets are some of the training systems that the other POs have. T7 could benefit from that for GBTS. But there's no reason for individual programs to go and build that type of data, right? We should centralize that, and SCARS is well positioned to do that. So that's an opportunity. Another one that I touched on earlier is the LVC thing. And I think that's really comes down to it's a recognition now of the opportunities that were before us. It's not that they're new opportunities per se, but when they were sitting in different divisions where you've got disparate priorities and you're working with different lead MAGCOMs, it's a lot harder to bring those things together, right? And now you've got LMOC and LMON coming on with that, the network piece. You've got the pods that go on the aircraft. You've got the virtual side, JSC, with a lot of high-end models. You've got DMO, which already provides us a great architecture to tie together simulators all across the nation. All that's in one place now, right? So now you've got all the material leaders, you've got all the section chiefs, you've got all the chief engineers, you've got all the PMs, all the supporting cast. They're all together and have opportunities to hear each other talking about their programs and what they're doing and who they're working with. And that's how you have those moments where the light bulb clicks on, right? Is when you're in the meeting and you hear somebody say something and you go, holy cow, I didn't know you were doing that. And you catch up with them afterwards and go, well, if you're doing this, I'm doing this. Let's bring these things together, right? Let's call up the MAGCOM and see if this makes sense. That's an opportunity before us that's never been there before for the Air Force. And it's also an opportunity to extend that and have great partnerships with the Navy and tie in with how they do LVC. Because again, I'm sure all of you have heard it here, no one's fighting alone, right? None of our services are fighting alone. Frankly, we're not gonna fight alone as a nation anymore, I hope, right? We're gonna be there with our partners. So how do we bring these things together so that folks can train together and build that readiness up together?
So I'll add one thing, I'll go back similar. So for me, a lot of the benefit for my training aircraft, right, legacy training aircraft has been the close collaboration with the simulators. And so thinking forward on that close collaboration, what's really important when we're modernizing or upgrading our aircraft that we use for pilot training is the synchronization is critical, and the timing of updates to aircraft and simulators has to be lockstep. So as we send pilots through that pilot training pipeline and going through that curriculum, they will start a class at a time, and there is a mandatory time they have to be with one configuration. And so we can't get out of step with how we modernize the aircraft and simulator, because that will mess with the flow of training our pilots and the curriculum that they require to go all the way through that program. And so I think this partnership and having this director, us to be able to have that enterprise look and having that closer connection, so especially as we're about to do a major modification to our T6, it's going to be really important that having us together, I think there's going to be a lot of benefit there. The other thing I'll say is going back to the joint aspect. So we work with the Navy a lot in T6, but being able to have that close collaboration at the joint level, so now having this enterprise look from the Air Force on training systems, and then taking that one step out and having that broader perspective of what's going on at the DoD level and having that one voice kind of from a training perspective, I think we're going to see tremendous value in that as well.
I've got one last pile on that I think there's another benefit. We haven't really recognized it yet, but I think it's coming, and that's the tie-in with what Q was saying about an innovation, a technology or innovation effort at the directorate level. It's a lot harder to push the noodle on things like that from a division level than it is if you're at the directorate level and if you've got multiple divisions looking for technologies that can be broadly applied. I think that is definitely going to be a benefit. Downrange, again, hasn't happened yet, but I feel very certain that that will be a significant lift for all of our divisions, and I think in particular these two right here are going to get a lot of lift out of that. I mean, you've seen all the technologies that are coming along down on the floor between XR and large language models and AI and those sorts of things that have a ton of applicability all across our two portfolios in particular. Being able to get support for doing things different than what you've done traditionally, sometimes that takes a little more juice, right? So when you can raise that up to the directorate level, where you have more direct access to the center commander, and in particular to Mr. Hunter or whoever his predecessor would be at the ASAF level, that can only help us communicate those things to the MAJCOMs and help push the ball down the field on incorporating and leveraging some of those emerging technologies.
Thanks, T2. I agree 100%, and I think what I want to kind of the audience to take some these comments is that we are all in terms of the benefits on this. You see the team is already connecting all these different ideas, either re-energizing or things that were not available to us. And I welcome any other thoughts that the team may have with regards to ways in which the enterprise, the training enterprise, especially on the acquisition side, needs to be looking at the problem in order for us to take advantage of these synergies. So I've gotten a few questions, and several of them are associated with how we can leverage industry under this new construct. Particularly talks about small business, because we know there is a lot of innovation to be had in the small business side. So I guess the question that I pose to the team here is, under now this new focus on an approach within our PEO training, how can we fold new business innovation into our portfolios in order to kind of bring those new solutions? I'll start with you, Nick.
Yeah, I think T2 hit on it already. I mean, we had an innovation cell in WNS, and frankly, I think that's still where it resides. Previously supporting, SCARS, JSE, and the whole simulator portfolio. We are going to raise that up a level, but that is not to say that we need to, we're going to cut out smaller companies from coming to visit us. And we do several things to involve you, and so be on the lookout. And if you haven't seen these things online, or you don't know who to contact, come see me after this, please. Give me your card. Our innovation cell, and that's primarily run by Doug Patton, has been down on the floor the entire week, and their job is to canvass the market, right? To see what technologies are out there, how they can be applied. And I've, in my short tenure, I've been here 3 months, have sat in 3 or 4 of those kind of one-on-one meetings, but they also offer like science fairs, almost like reverse industry days, where you come in and show us what you have. I can't promise we're gonna have a check to sign that day, but it's gonna put some awareness out there, and we can then bring that across the training portfolio and even into some of our platform offices. I think we've seen some benefit there as well. So absolutely, the innovation cell is the entry point for us, I think, unless one of these fine folks is gonna overrule me and say, no, come see me directly. But I think our innovation cell really does a good job of kind of canvassing the whole landscape.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. That's certainly one of the tie-ins. I'll jump to just maybe a couple of specific examples that I think are coming our way. They're already on the market, and they're already in some of our unit-level training facilities across the country, but I think we're going to continue to see an uptick. And this is an area that I think right now small business is dominating in this area, and that's the lightweight sim universe, right? And some of that grew out of Innovation Cell in the past. I think that's going to be continuing to grow. I think the MAJCOMs are wrestling with how do those fit, and Nick kind of talked on this a little bit earlier. How do those fit in conjunction with? I don't think they necessarily are going to straight up replace some of the big box sims that we employ and have been sustaining for a while, but I think they have probably a broader applicability than what we're giving them right now. So I know the MAJCOMs are trying to work through that and look at wrap tasking and what can be replaced with what. And frankly, they're doing the same wrestling match between live fly and virtual, like what portions should be done live, what portions should be done virtual. But I think that's an area that's going to continue to grow. I look at things like JSC. I suspect there's going to be a future state where those kinds of technologies are going to be something that we employ to get after having these large regional facilities for JSC. And I know I'm at risk of getting out in front of my skis a little bit on that, and I know some of the folks in the audience are skiers, and we know what happens when you do that. But anyway, I think there's going to be a place for that in the future. When I look at SCARs, again, touching on some of the comments of the panel earlier, if you have reference architectures, if you have those enabling standards, it affords opportunities for small business to get in the game, right? You level the playing field a little bit by doing that, and you really allow more competition so that you can have that meritocracy and go best of the best, right? No one's number one at everything, right? That just doesn't happen in life. It'd be great if it did, but it doesn't. Or at least for the one person, I guess. For the rest of it would kind of suck. But so no one's number one at everything, but there's a lot of people that are number one at something. We want to find who you are, and we want to bring you in and let you deliver the number one thing to the United States Air Force, right? So that we can go and crush the enemy. Or better yet, maybe the enemy doesn't even want to step in the arena with us, and we can just deter the whole event, right? That would be better. So those are just a couple of specific examples that come to mind for me.
I'll add one more example, and that's open system architecture. So one of the things we're trying to build into our programs as we update aircraft, as we design aircraft, is building in that open system architecture. So as you can bring new technology, new components to us, then we can easily integrate those in. And we can do those, at the component or a subsystem level. And so that's one of the things we're working on specifically within my portfolio is, as we do, like I mentioned, we have a major upgrade right now. That's just getting started on our T6. That's one of our foundational focuses is ensuring that we have open system architecture so that the future capability, we can add that in much easier and integrate that and leverage competition and businesses.
I think adding in one thing as part of that continuous evaluation that you mentioned earlier, making sure that you reevaluate our team. It's incumbent on our team to canvass the small businesses to ensure that, that's where the latest, greatest, as you mentioned earlier, quick fielding capabilities that will help us address training gaps that we may identify as part of that continuous process.
Yeah, and I will tell you that there is plenty of opportunities, but also you see the perspective, from Abigail's standpoint. She wants that open architecture because she actually is at the end of the cycle, and not having it is affecting her ability to be able to modify, to change things faster, to keep some of these older platforms going. And it's so important that is that T7, that implements some of those things at the early stages. So when we are now in more maintenance sustainment mode, we can still continue to kind of update and adapt those platforms as needed. So I think there is definitely synergy, but also opportunity for lessons learned between both sides. As we actually now we're looking at doing a handover within their own directorate, it's not throwing over the fence, not that approach. Now it's actually, no kidding, a planned process in which goes from a new platform development to a more sustainment of these platforms in support of that specific mission. In our case, training specific. So a couple of the questions as I go forward here. There is another one that I think it's definitely worth kind of exploring, which is how we are utilizing the adaptive acquisition framework to accelerate our programs. And I will tell you that we are, and I think the team can give us a couple of examples on the things that we are doing that, but more important, that not that PEO training can take credit for that, because a lot of the strategies were worked out before they came to us, but it's about the mindset that we embracing those opportunities and continue to utilize those. T2, I'm going to start with you because obviously one of the biggest ones that comes to mind is JSC and the software pathway that we're going after.
Right, so we are officially the biggest software pathway program, I think, in DoD with JSC. Some of the interesting features that brings with it is when you go up to the staff and say, hey, we're thinking this, is that how it works? They go, I don't know, sounds pretty good. Nobody's done it before. Okay, great, right? So you get to plow a lot of new ground, and sometimes that's good, sometimes it's rough going. So the team is grinding through that right now. I kind of mentioned the other day that we're approaching our execution phase decision early this spring with Mr. Hunter or with, again, whoever his predecessor might be with the change of administration. So we've learned a lot on how to do that software acquisition pathway. We're going to continue learning a lot. And I think the Air Force is going to learn a lot from us as we, again, plow that new ground. So that's probably the biggest area for us that has been leveraging some of the new features of that adaptive acquisition framework. I think, again, tying back to what I talked about earlier with lightweight SIMs, I suspect there's a future there where we will be looking at also leveraging some of the other pathways that are there, not necessarily software pathway, but probably not MCA, right, not major capability, but some of the others potentially to bring things like that on board. Certainly in support of JSC, I can envision that. So I think there's a number of places where having this additional flexibility that was brought about by that new framework is certainly helping my team get after problems that really would have been somewhat intractable from a acquisition process perspective had we been trying to do this a decade ago without some of the new flexibilities and some of the new recognition by the department of how we could do business differently, right? So that's kind of what comes to mind.
And I think you can show a different perspective because we talk about, for example, MTA, middle tier acquisition opportunities on the new programs, but Abigail is actually using some of those on the sustainment side or maintaining those programs, which allow us to kind of maintain that fleet. So why don't you talk to us about that?
So in 2018, the Air Force experienced an extremely high rate of physiological events or PE events in our oxygen system in many aircraft. T6 specifically was one for us. And so from there, we had to quickly, we grounded the aircraft. We did some analysis. There was an investigation that went on. And the outcome of that is we've got to rapidly field a capability to put fixes in place to address our oxygen systems so that we can bring those hypoxia events down, give confidence back to the pilot community that these are safe aircraft to fly as they're training. And so we utilize the middle tier of acquisition pathway to develop a 7-increment program to rapidly develop and field capability to enhance the oxygen system. So we're on the 7th increment right now, and we've seen all of those PEs now come back down to the normal range. But that flexibility in the adaptive acquisition framework allowed us to quickly adapt what we were doing and rapidly field a capability to address a safety concern that was out there for pilot community.
And Nick, I think on your portfolio, I think some of the things that you guys are working towards the use of IDIQ programs, preset down selections to expedite source selection activities. So you guys are doing multiple things to try to kind of prime the pump and be able to kind of support. Why don't you talk to us about some of those initiatives you guys are working?
Sure. Yeah, I think if I heard TSA 4 once this week, I probably heard it 1 million times this week. So there are a lot of industry partners, 30-ish, 30-plus partners on the TSA 4. It's Training Systems Acquisition Contract, which is an IDIQ. We're using it for several of our current ongoing CLS competition efforts. We just announced T6 award, for instance, was the most recent one. We're also using it for some of our sole source initiatives as well. But similarly, we took the B-52 program as one of our, really my primary development program going on. Actually started out as a SBIR program, and we're taking that through development under the SBIR architecture. And so I think I hear about adaptive acquisition framework, And I don't think it was like a big bang, wow, look at all these new cool authorities we have. It was really just a consolidation of what was out there, so that it was kind of a one-stop shop, right? I mean, I don't think they added anything brand new into law that allowed us to implement these things. SBIR was out there, other transactions were out there, and so I think it's just more of an acknowledgement that, hey, we have these, we can use them mainstream, and so I think that's what you're seeing across, especially across my portfolio, but across the Air Force and the DoD. So anyway.
Thanks, Eric. And I guess T7 is obviously a very specific beast because of the kind of phase of the program we are today, but that is not stopping us to be looking at some other ways to actually take additional risks and be a little bit more innovative in our pathways as we go forward into production and beyond. Obviously, we talked about the GBTS, and as we relook in that approach, there is other areas in T7 that we're looking at in order to how to incentivize properly and bring some of those refocus in certain areas in order to manage the risk and be able to keep the company on track to deliver those. And if you want to kind of elaborate on those.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're doing the active management that you just referenced, and similarly on the device side, I know we're looking at. We just had the discussion earlier about what can we do to rapidly deliver some of the capabilities that AETC does not currently have, and we are actually working with WNS to. I know our MTS is going through the TSA 4 contract, and we're working with the Innovation Cell and Nick's team to further utilize some of those resources.
Yeah, so I think overall to close on this question is the team is using all the tools available, but more important, we are again not trying to go more of the same kind of cookie cutter approach. The team is on their own, looking for opportunities to expedite delivery of capabilities, access to government activities for our small business and other contractors, and be able to do that pool of technology innovation into the hands of our user as soon as possible. So I think the team has been doing a great job on that. Another question that I kind of got here that I think can help us out on kind of the posture of how we're trying to set up the training PEO talks about how we are handling risk. And I think it's an interesting question because we all talk about risk management as a tenet under the program management approach, and we all understand that we need to do it. But I think it's really interesting how our team is leading forward in multiple of these fronts with regards to that. For example, Abby, you can talk to us a little bit of the things you're doing in order to bring the aircraft availability numbers up within the T6 fleet. And you are pushing the envelope and actually leaning forward in terms of risk acceptance in order to bring some of those numbers up.
Yes, sir. So right now, the T6, we use that to train Air Force and Navy for primary flight. And so we are having a difficult time with keeping our aircraft availability up, and primarily focused, our risk right now is in our area of supply chain management. And so that was a competitively awarded contract. There's rules around competitively awarded contracts. And so we're leaning forward and looking at how much risk can we take in terms of what do we do to supplement that? Are there other contracts that we can utilize within that contract, within the legal realm of what we can utilize on the structure of that? How do we leverage what's already built into there to take some risk in terms of pulling in different lines of efforts? We've actually established 6 different lines of efforts to address the risks that our supply chain issues are having. We're creating operational risks to our using communities, both for the Air Force and Navy. And so doing things like supplementing the flying hour program with additional dollars above and beyond what a contract is already funded. Those are things that are mitigating that risk. Having supplemental contracts where we can go out to other industry partners, or utilizing our organic partners for a primarily CLS contract to see how can our partners over in Aircraft Sustainment Center help us and utilize reverse engineering, organic manufacturer developing some OMIT type data for us that traditionally we wouldn't have. So we're taking a little bit of risk there than what you would normally do in a CLS managed platform because the operational risk is too great. And so we've got to do things different. We can't continue to operate the same way that we have because it worked in the past. It doesn't necessarily work today. So we're really pushing the envelope with our T6 program office and how can we do things differently and changing the culture. So some of it is changing the culture and how we think, and opening our aperture to other ideas and other ways of doing business. And so leveraging, like I said, our organic partners, and really leaning heavily on the enterprise as a whole of how we can do things different and really mitigate that risk down for our operational users.
Hey, I know we're running out of time. I fundamentally don't see a lot of difference, right, in how you do programmatic risk management. You still got to do that with discipline, just like we've always done. At the end of the day, somebody's gonna be holding the bag to make a decision in a world of uncertainty. You're gonna try to minimize the uncertainty, and you're gonna make a call. And then you're gonna go execute with violence against that, or at least that's what your team darn well better do, right? And sometimes you're gonna make the right call, sometimes you're not. And so sometimes you're gonna have to make a vector check, hopefully have the humility to go, hey, that wasn't the best idea in the world. And you're going to correct that and do it better. None of that really changes. To me, what changes from a risk equation is a bigger discussion, and it's Air Force risk. It's the reason this got stood up. Previously, training capability delivery was scattered across numerous directorates and numerous teams. And in most cases, maybe not all, but in most cases, it was not priority one, right? Because in most cases, it was mixed with put iron on the ramp. And when you have it mixed with put iron on the ramp, most of the time the priority call is going to be iron, right? Get the flow going. And it's not going to be take care of training. I think that's ultimately the change in risk posture that happened is now the Air Force has a directorate that it's our job to pay attention to training and how that supports readiness of the force with our capability delivery and not be distracted's probably not exactly the right word, but it's the only one that's coming to mind, so I'll use it. Not be distracted by iron, right? We have a singular focus in support of all the other directorates to make sure they're getting those training capabilities that they need in support of the iron that they're putting on the ramp. You can have the greatest widget in the world. If you don't know how to use it, doesn't matter, right? You're still going to lose. To me, that's the risk posture change.
No, thanks, Chicho. I think that's a great perspective and obviously a challenge that we need to, at the leadership level, to ensure that change in mentality happens, and then how we mechanize it. Because, I mean, we all can agree on the topic, but we still have to mechanize that. And there is a conversation with the rest of the leadership and the Air Force on how best to mechanize that specific piece. And more to come with that. Obviously, we initiated the conversation already at the Mr. Hunter level, but more to come on that. So I think we are almost done in terms of time here. But there was one question that it was to me. I'm gonna be very brief, but I think it's important that we address it. And the question is, with numerous organizations developing all different XR, AR, VR training platforms and products, there's a PEO level initiative to establish a centralized digital location to consolidate all these efforts. And I don't know who wrote this question. I don't know if it was part of our PEO training staff and they're just playing a trick on me. But we spend, so we had a 3-day summit, 2.5-day summit, and I will tell you that we probably spent almost a full day, I don't know if you guys agree, but on that specific topic. How do we, as an Air Force, get the XR, VR technology explosion under control? We don't want to stop innovation. We want to utilize it to the max extent. But what we don't have is a enterprise look on how we go about doing this. Is the solution for every unit to keep buying what they need? Maybe. or is a way in which we buy this, develop it to a level that meets the standards and the architecture that we're going after, and then be able to utilize it across many of our possible customers, both on the A4 side, on the aircrew side, on the training environment in the classroom, and many other uses that we probably saw many of those here at this conference for the last couple of days. So to answer your question is, we are absolutely in the middle of having a discussion of how we go forward with that. Obviously, that's not just a PEO training piece. This is about an Air Force policy and how we deal with that. But we need to go hand in hand because the training community is heavily invested in these technologies, and we need to have a clear roadmap in how we go about utilizing it. So we are more to come on that. I don't have the answer for you today, but it's something that is at the forefront of our discussion with leadership as we go forward. Okay, so with the last 5 minutes left, I think I'm going to give an opportunity for the team to some close out comments as we wrap this up in terms of our initial PEO training discussion. So Nick, why don't we start with you? Sure.
Yeah, as I said, I'm humbled to be in this position, humbled to be up here with these great leaders, and I'll say running such a great team. I've spoken with many of our industry partners this week. I think I have a few more to go this week, but if I missed you, please reach out. And I think, as I mentioned, Doug Patton, our innovation cell for the small businesses, the ones that we don't have active contracts with, is probably the best first step. But please come find me if you don't know how to make that connection. I think that I'm going to continue to use the word new, although I think my boss, Colonel Q, said I couldn't use that after the first week. But being fairly new in the seat, it's been a great event to put names with faces, to learn a lot from all of you. So I thank you for that. I think as I mentioned, my focus, my vision is, yep, I got to keep the lights on, but with some other limited resources, I need your help trying to figure out this lightweight part task trainer thing, because I think it is the way of the future, and I think it's the way we need to be going. So with that, I'll pass it over to Colonel Ryan.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for everyone who spent their morning with us, and I'll keep it simple to this. The reason my team exists is to provide the tools needed so our warriors make good decisions when they're under duress, okay? And I look forward to working with you and partnering with you on delivering those tools, because I believe it's one of the most important jobs that we've got in this country. So whether you're a MAGCOM partner, another directorate within the big apparatus of DoD acquisition, academia, industry, coalition partners, look forward to working with you so that our Air Force continues to be the greatest in the world.
All right. Well, for me, I'll say when I first found out about the stand-up of this new PEO training director, I got really excited. So I've spent, a little over 3 years just, lens down, focused in on pilot production, on getting aircraft up in the air so we can train our pilots, and now opening the aperture to being able to see where we fit into the broader spectrum of training for the Air Force and the DoD is just very eye-opening, and to getting to partner here and having more of an enterprise view, I think is going to be tremendous value to the Air Force, to the DoD, and then to our acquisition professionals. So they're getting to learn more and to understand how they connect. It's critical that we make sure that our workforce connects to the mission and they understand the why behind what they're doing. And so I think by bringing this group of acquisition professionals together, by bringing this enterprise together, we're going to do that. And so that's our number one tool in our toolbox is our people. And so really creating that culture around what we're doing and why we're doing it, I think is going to just pay phenomenal dividends in the future. So thank you.
I think this reorg has come at a very crucial time on the T7 program as we try and close out EMD, and we're able to leverage the resources that we now have access to from the enterprise PEO. So I just wanted to thank everyone, and yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I want to say thank you to all of you for spending time with us this morning. Thank you to the panel for your great insight into how we're moving forward. PEO training is here, and we are ready to support the mission as we go forward. Thank you very much, and have a great day.